Okay, well, we are going to go ahead and get started. We will do a little introduction here at the beginning, so if people join us late, they can get caught up with us easily. We want to welcome you and thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join us here from Pomerantz Career Center at the University of Iowa. This is the webinar being offered by Pomerantz Career Center for parents and caring others. Those of you that have a student or students, as I know some of you have multiple students at the University of Iowa who are getting ready to look for an internship or gain that experience. So that's what we're really going to be talking about today is how to help your student get ready to find that experience that's so valuable to them as they progress in their career development. My name is Angie McKee, and I am the Executive Director at Pomerantz Career Center, and we have three of my colleagues here that are going to introduce themselves as we begin.
Hi, I'm Gary Klein. I'm one of the career coaches at the University of Iowa Pomerantz Career Center. Just really happy you all are visiting and joining us today.
I'm Alan Betker. I'm the Senior Director of Corporate and Community Outreach for the Pomerantz Career Center, and I've been in the Career Center for about 15 years. And I'm also the parent of two college-age students, so I know what you're going through.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dana Dominguez. I'm going to be moderating the webinar, so if you have any difficulties or anything, feel free to send me a message. And I'm also the Associate Director for Communications and Operations at the Career Center.
Great. And I will also be sharing a PowerPoint, which I forgot to do. So I apologize for that. Let's try this again. And here you can see us, a little bit more information about us, and also our email addresses as well. So that might be useful to you after the webinar today. If you have any questions, we welcome emails from you and continuing the conversation. So if there's any questions that you did not get answered today, please just go ahead and feel free to send us an email afterwards. Just as a little bit of follow-up to today, we will actually be sending out a PowerPoint or a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation today, because the PowerPoint does include some links and some information that you might want to follow up on afterwards. And that way you will have it in your email and you don't have to frantically take notes today. Just a little bit of information about Pomerantz Career Center. We are really the main hub for career services on the University of Iowa campus. We work primarily with undergraduate students from many different colleges, all the undergraduate colleges, in fact. So College of Business, Liberal Arts and Sciences, Nursing Education, Public Health, University College, and we have a partnership with the College of Engineering to provide kind of in partnership career services for students there. We have a colleague, Travis Greenlee, who some of you maybe have heard from, and he is an advisor and coach within the College of Engineering. We work really closely with him. We really start working with students from their first moment that they become enrolled as students at the University of Iowa. We work with students to help them select a career path that connects with majors they're thinking about. And then what we're going to be talking about today is how to gain experience in those areas, really to apply that knowledge from the classroom in a hands-on way that helps them kind of solidify what they're learning and get that practical experience that's going to help them as they progress in their career and as they go on to apply for graduate school or go on to enter the workforce. And a lot of what we're going to be focused on today is related to internships, but know that this also applies to students who may be doing something very similar to internships, but isn't called an internship. So that might be a practicum or a clinical or a student teaching experience, anything that is that getting out in a hands-on setting and applying what you're learning. So while we might be talking about internships almost exclusively today, much of this applies to students that are really gaining experiences in situations very similar to internships. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about hiring trends. So what is going on in industry right now? What are we hearing from employers? What are we seeing nationally? And then what are we seeing a little closer to home here in Pomerantz Career Center and when we work around the region with employers? One of the reasons why we did this session today, this webinar, is to let you know about something else exciting happening over winter break, and that is Intern Ready. So we're going to talk about this self-paced series that's happening over winter break, and much of what we're doing over winter break here, which is slightly different than our normal winter breaks, is because we're in a very different situation. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, as we all know, and this has really changed the situation for undergrads and graduate students, but undergrads who are really getting ready to enter the workforce and that are looking for internships and looking for that experience. And we know that the situation just isn't status quo and isn't normal. So that's why it's even more important than ever before for you as families of students to know how to help best support them, and for students themselves to be able to take some action and some control over their own preparation for these experiences. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Intern Ready. And get into really what are some tangible ways that you can help your student. We'll share some resources that you can kind of keep handy as you prepare to help your student, not only over winter break, but looking forward to the spring semester and in the future. And then we will save some time for Q&A. The Q&A box is available throughout the webinar, so you're welcome to put questions in that Q&A box and we will respond to them either through that same box and you'll be able to see it there visually, or we will answer them verbally. If there's any we haven't gotten to at the end of the webinar, we'll go through those at that point. Just some general tips. We are, as you can see, we have the transcription going, so you're welcome to, if you're a visual learner, we want to be as inclusive as possible. The transcription feature is on, and we are recording this webinar. I know we have a lot of parents that aren't able to join us in the middle of the day, so it will be available on our YouTube channel and on our website as well. If you're having any difficulties, there are a few tips here at the bottom. You can try a different browser, or again, chat us through the Q&A or the chat button, and we can help you with those things. And now I'm going to kick it over to Al to talk about some recruitment trends.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to start with talking a little bit about the recruitment shift to online, and then we're going to talk about some of the challenges that are being faced by both recruiters and students as this trend has taken off a little bit here. And then we're going to talk about preparing for both applying for positions and then also the interviews themselves. And then some little things about what employers are going to be looking for in the virtual experience. So to start things off, I apologize that there's a lot of info on this slide, so we'll walk through it slowly and just talk through each section individually here. Up on the upper left-hand corner, you can see that we're talking about unique students who have attended a group or one-on-one session. And this is information that's provided to us by Handshake, which is our online platform that allows students to apply for jobs and attend virtual fairs and interviews and that kind of thing. And so Handshake provides us this information about the national number. So 260,000 students is not the number of Iowa students that actually attended virtual sessions, but it's the number of all Handshake users that attended this fall. So it's a significant amount. You can see that there's a massive shift to the virtual experience. For us locally here, we had about 8,000 students who connected with employers via those one-on-one sessions or those group sessions at virtual events through Handshake. In the next column, you can see the 81,000 unique recruiters who attended those sessions too. So lots of connection between recruiters and students. At the University of Iowa, it's close to 1,000 recruiters that have participated in our virtual fairs and info sessions here. So at unique employers is the next column with 17,000 employers connecting, over 17,000 connecting nationwide. At the University of Iowa, we had over 350 employers that connected directly with our students here. So some of those trends that we were talking about are the job and internship postings is one of the key things. So we've been using the system, like I mentioned, Handshake for several years now. And postings for jobs, internships, volunteer positions, research are all up. So they have increased from last fall at this time to over 2,000 more postings than we had last fall at this time. So just to give you an example, last fall we had over 26,000 postings for that whole fall period, and then this fall, from July 1st through the end of December, in the fall of 2020, we had over 28,000 postings that were live. So a significant jump, and that's one of the trends we've been seeing for sure. Obviously, there's been a shift to virtual interviews, and that has taken place via those different platforms. Zoom, like we're using today, or Skype, or WebEx, or HireVue, or Microsoft Teams, all those systems are being used for those interviews. And that's something that students and recruiters have had to ramp up on and be prepared to use as part of the interview experience. Career fairs have changed quite a bit. I don't know of any in-person career fairs that happened this year with any of the colleagues in the Big Ten. We did not have virtual career fairs this last fall, or in-person career fairs this last fall at all. All of our fairs were virtual. Some of the typically larger fairs, we broke up into smaller niche fairs. So they were smaller and more focused on specific areas. So that was really valuable, both for the recruiters and the students, to be able to connect with the employers that are more appropriate for them. We also had a great deal of networking events and information sessions that were offered through the virtual platforms as well. Those are all announced in the events section in Handshake, and they included the things that you see below, like office hours and virtual tours, professional development. We had several employers that have alums from the University of Iowa that work there, and they had alumni spotlights that kind of highlighted what it was like for an alum to make the transition from the University of Iowa to working at, like, Google, for example, was one of the organizations that hosted an alumni spotlight. So lots of different ways that the recruitment has shifted to online. Now, there have been several challenges that have been a part of this experience, but some of the key things are that, as I mentioned before, job postings have remained high. That's something that we were concerned about. We weren't sure what was going to happen with the posting numbers, and that has been a reassuring experience to be able to follow that weekly and see how the postings have been maintained. So there's definitely some activity happening there as far as the postings go. There has been a little bit of a shift to more just-in-time hiring. So traditionally, some organizations will recruit at a certain timeline. For example, accounting might hire in the fall for their summer internships for the next year, or for their fall start dates or summer start dates. So it's a little bit more typical to see a shift to just-in-time hiring right now. So that's a little bit of a change. It hasn't affected all industries, but it has affected some. And so there's been some waiting and hiring in a more specific need-based timeline. Certainly, the shift has also been made to be have some opportunities be in person versus virtual, and vice versa. We're seeing that with some of the internship postings that are happening for this coming summer, where some of the postings will say that they're not sure if this will be an in-person or virtual experience, and either way they'll have the internship, but it will depend on where we are as a nation in order to be able to host those things in person, or if they will be largely virtual. So that will be in transition throughout the spring, I'm sure. Also, we'll see the number of applications increase, and that's largely due to an addition of competition, somewhat from pandemic unemployment. Several people obviously have been laid off as a part of this situation that we find ourselves in. So we'll find more traditional recent grads having a little bit more competition. So it's more important than ever to follow some of the guidelines that we'll talk about on the next slide. So you can see a little bit about the impact that it's having on specific sectors and industries. Health service and education services certainly have been increasing in certain areas, although they felt some pullback in other areas too. But you can see some of the some of the least positive sectors I know near and dear to my heart is the arts and entertainment industry, the closing of in-person theaters and how that affects all the performers and the staff that are part of those theaters has been significant. And you can see that in certain sectors as well. So that has been certainly a big challenge. And then there's also have less opportunity for in-person networking. So it makes it more important than ever to be able to follow up and be connecting virtually and be comfortable with the virtual setting in that way. So on the next page, we're talking here a little bit about preparing for those online applications and interviews. One of the key things to get ready for that is to make sure that your documents are all in order, making sure that your resume and cover letter are up to snuff so that there are zero mistakes, zero spelling, zero grammar issues, and then also making sure that those pieces are in line with what's on your LinkedIn profile. That's always a key thing too, especially if you're going to be connecting with the recruiters that you're interacting with, making sure that that resume matches up with the experiences that you've had on your LinkedIn profile is key to be able to highlight those experiences that you've had that really link you up with the internships and jobs that you're applying for. Another key aspect is making sure that your technology is ready. Knowing that your camera and microphone both work, that the lighting is appropriate, that people can see your face, that the background isn't distracting, that maybe, I know most of our office has pets and we have a lot of four-legged interruptions during meetings. So being able to limit that interruption during an interview or a virtual experience is going to be key. So doing what you can to minimize those distractions. Then I would suggest definitely practicing your interviews. It's not something that we think about. You don't interview every day unless you're a recruiter, probably. So practicing that interview skill is certainly going to be very important as you get ready to apply for those jobs and internships. And we have some ways to be able to do that through the Career Center. One of those ways is mock interviews. We recruit recruiters to help participate in the mock interview program that we have. Students can sign up for mock interviews through Handshake, and they actually get to practice their interview skills with an actual recruiter and get feedback on the spot about how they're doing interview-wise. So it's a very robust program. We have volunteers from all different industries that are helping with those, and they happen throughout the semester as a part of our experience in the Pomerantz Career Center. Also, we have a virtual opportunity for you to be able to practice interviews. It's called Big Interview. It's a software system that's available free to our students that they can access through our website. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later. And it really has a database of thousands of interview questions that students can hear an actor ask them an interview question, and then they record themselves answering those questions. And then there's artificial intelligence built into the system to give them feedback. And you can also send your recorded interview answers to people to get feedback from them as well. So it's a great way to be able to practice interviews and get really good at the interview skill. We also have interview space available in the Pomerantz Career Center that students are able to use just by calling our office to reserve that space. We had a student in the office yesterday doing an interview. And so it's a private space that's highly sanitized. And so students are able to use that to conduct their virtual interview or participate in a virtual career fair or networking event that's available to them if they don't have a reliable internet connection or a quiet space to be able to conduct those interviews. We do have that available in the Career Center. So finally, I'll wrap up with a little bit about what employers are looking for. And of course, it's really key to match up with the job qualifications. So making sure to go through the job description and look carefully for those keywords and indications of what the job responsibilities are going to be and how your experiences as an applicant match up with those job qualifications, being able to really identify what has helped prepare you for this role. The top skills from NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. It's one of the professional organizations that we are a part of. They indicate these top skills as things that employers are going to be looking for as they're interviewing. So being prepared to talk about how you can problem solve, work in a team, what's your work ethic like and your initiative. Are you able to analyze things well? And are you able to communicate both written and verbally? And that leadership skill and how that's been demonstrated in your experience as well is very key. So being able to talk about each of these areas with specific examples is going to be really important in that interview process, both for an internship and a full-time position. The other thing that we've heard from employers this semester especially is there is a candidate's ability to handle tech issues. So if you're having trouble with your camera or your microphone or your internet connection, how do you respond to that? Are you able to follow up with an email immediately? Do you have the contact information for that recruiter so you can reach out to their cell phone if your technology goes down? Do you get flustered and just give up? Or do you follow through and find ways to make it work and make that connection happen between that employer? So that's something that recruiters are evaluating a little bit more than they ever have in the past because of our unique situation in this virtual environment, which makes it even more important to follow up and follow through. So if you've agreed to connect with someone on LinkedIn as a part of your interview experience, then absolutely do that. If you have completed your interview process, we always recommend sending a thank you note, both as an email, and then if you're able to do a handwritten thank you as well, if you have their actual physical address, that's impressive to a recruiter to actually receive a written thank you note. I know I had a previous boss who, when I was in sales, would not hire anyone that didn't send us a thank you note after their interview process. So it can be a hiring consideration as well. So those are some of the things I wanted to share with you about our connection ability with employers, the kinds of activities you want to do to get prepared for those interviews, and to some of the trends that we've been talking about as well. And I'll turn it back over to Angie, I think.
Thank you, Al, for sharing that information, and a lot of good information. And employers have been very adaptable, just like the rest of us, through this pandemic. And some of the things that we saw very early on in the pandemic, where employers had to push pause on experiences and pause on internships as they were figuring out and navigating how they were going to host students, or if they were going to be able to host students, and would they host them virtually, and how would that work? Some of that has been worked out by this point, especially some of our mid and smaller size organizations that didn't have the infrastructure have now figured out how to either, if they can host people safely on site or virtually. So again, the months that we've been in this have benefited us all just because we know more, even though there is still some uncertainty. The next thing we want to talk about is Intern Ready. As I mentioned, this winter break has offered us an opportunity to do something a little bit different. And this experience is for students, and we hope that you will tell your students about it after the webinar today if they don't already know about it. So all of your students have used ICON. ICON is the system through the University of Iowa where they will go to hand in assignments, where they will go to see content for their classes, and sometimes participate with other classmates through discussion boards and things like that, sometimes even take quizzes. It's the platform that they use every day for courses, whether they're taking in-person courses or virtual courses. So we are hosting a self-paced series over winter break that begins this week. In fact, it launched yesterday through ICON, called Intern Ready. And what this is really about is 4 different modules that we're going to take a look at, and it helps students get everything in line and do some pre-work so that they're ready to hit the ground running and find that internship and know how to search for that internship. And one of the reasons we're doing this is we've heard from employers that they know that COVID has been a huge disruption for all of us. We know that, but they want to know what students have been doing with that disruption. Did they take advantage of the time to watch 3 more series on Netflix, or did they take the time to really do some skill development and use that time to kind of do some professional development and things like that? Or maybe they did both. But employers do want to know what students are doing with this extra time and with this disruption. So Intern Ready begins this week, and is through Icon, and will go through the remainder of winter break, but is something that students can use well into spring semester. So as I mentioned, there are 4 different modules. The first one really is some pre-work. It helps the student know if this is if this is the right opportunity for them, and helps them get ready. So if your student already has a resume and is ready to look for internships, this might be a great opportunity. If your student doesn't have a resume yet, we can help them get to that point so they are ready to take that next step and move on through Intern Ready. It kind of helps them know, are you ready? Do you have your bases covered? Do you have your basic documents put together? Then in Module 1, it helps students really think about where are my connections? You know, we hate to use the word networking too soon with students because it can be intimidating. Networking sounds like something working professionals do, but not as a student. So it really helps them look at, who am I connected to? Who am I connected to through my family, through my friends, through my faculty members and my advisors here on campus, maybe a supervisor through a part-time job. Who are my connections? And how can they help me with my internship search? So it really walks them through that connection piece. Really gets into tailoring. It says tailoring your resumes for each of those jobs that you find or each of those internships so that you can put your best foot forward, you can stand out and make a great first impression and prepare yourself for that interview and that experience. And then the third one is really about creating a plan. How am I going to implement my internship search? How am I going to put this into place? And goes through some additional resources. The great thing about this program is that each module has some content that everyone will look at, everyone will view. It has opportunities for them to hear from alums and hear from current interns in videos and things like that. And it has some choose your own adventure activities where they can pick something that means the most to them and is most relevant ways and opportunities for them to interact with Pomerantz Career Center staff and interns. And so this is one of the great things that we are most looking forward to, is interacting with students. And we're already seeing students put things in the discussion boards and chat, and it's been great to see that interaction so far. So each one is a little bit different, and the students can complete all of this over winter break, or they can get started and then complete it as they go into spring semester, as they have more time. So it really is at your own pace. And I'm going to hand it over to Gary, because Intern Ready is really geared towards students, and we encourage each of your students to register for that and take advantage of it. But there's ways for you as families of students that you can help them in their own career development.
So hi, everybody. Gary Klein again with you. One of the things I wanted to mention to all of you, that I'm one of about 12 career coaches or advisors at the center, and we advise based on career communities. In other words, by interest. For instance, I advise students in the arts, media, and entertainment area. And as Al has already pointed out to you, I've been kind of busy because of the lack of opportunities, and also the helping and counseling areas. But based on whatever your student has interest in, we have a coach for them. So I wanted to actually ask you all a question, because it's been sort of like you've listened to us a lot. I'd like to listen to you for a second to ask you to remember way back when you were an undergraduate, perhaps. Remember and respond to this question. Did you have an internship while you were in school, or do part-time work that related to the career that you eventually got into? And if you did, in the chat box, put a Y for yes, and if not, an N will work good. That'll be fine. And as you're doing that, I also want you to think about how you felt when you went after that first internship. I just want you to think about those feelings that you might have had doing that. Okay. So give you a couple seconds to kind of join in. Also, by the way, while I'm thinking about it and you're putting in information, if you have any questions for us, again, use the Q&A box for that purpose. And if you have any tips for your fellow parents, feel free to add that to the chat as well. We'd like you to feel like you're a part of all this rather than just a bunch of talking heads on a screen with you today. Okay, well, great. Great. So and thank you all for participating in this part. And one of the things I wanted to say, if you did participate in an internship, great. If it turned out it wasn't the career for you, you learned that partly because of that internship and probably redirected your efforts in a different direction. And that's great. That's one of the things you should probably share with your student as well. You should also remember maybe the stress that you felt looking for that internship, because I got to tell you, your students are feeling that right now, probably a little more intensely because of the situation we find ourselves in right now. Also, think about if you were not lucky enough to have an internship, but maybe had a part-time job you had to do. All of those skills you gain through those employment opportunities actually are useful in your students making future plans. And so, and if you were one of those people who didn't do internships, but maybe you did research in a lab, or you did some volunteerism, or you were involved in athletics, or whatever it may have been, all those things have transferability to those. Now, for those of you who are here because you want to help your student find opportunities, we're glad you're here. I hope you're hearing some of the things that we are saying, but also know that that you can always recommend us to your students. Actually, that's why I'm here. So if you think about this, there are about 3 good ways that you're going to be able to help your students. And before I jump into that, I just want to say that coaching is not new to you as parents. You do this all the time, and you've coached them all of their lives. And just know that advisors like myself we're here to help them succeed, not to replace coach dad or mom. We're here to supplement the team. So one of the things we do think you can do is help them to talk to them about making their plans, because one of the things is that they're making goals and important goals. And so asking them the open-ended kind of questions like, what are your plans for the summer, is much better than, are you going after an internship? Asking them what they plan to do opens a conversation up. Asking things like, outside of classes, how are you applying what you're learning? Or I heard that it can take 6 months to find an internship. By the way, that is true. How's your search going is a perfectly great question. So talk to them about making plans. So the second thing you can do is help them to find people who can help them with their career goals. Students are highly reticent at first to reach out to people they don't know. And sometimes it's helpful for you to help them by introducing them to people who are doing things that they may be interested in. Now, it's important that you not see this as trying to solve a problem for them, but think of yourself as a collaborator, not a fixer. It's up to them to really get a hold of this and get the reward for the effort that they put in. So do point them in the direction of people who can help. And if we can go on to the third thing they can do is you can suggest resources such as the ones that Al has recommended earlier. I'm going to address the question that I'm seeing in the chat box. So your child's unsure of their major. We have a lot of resources to help students assess their interest, and we have great conversations and help them plan majors together. So that's certainly something we can do too. But to get back on our topic of today, I do want to say that the resources we have at the center are things that Al, as I said, described earlier, like Handshake and other services, which you'll go into a little more depth in a moment, are good for you to look at too, because again, your student is likely to be confused may be unsure of what they should do. And sometimes when you just discover things together, it actually works out better for them. And so a walkthrough is always a great thing. So I'm going to turn it back over to Al, and then I'll be back.
Thanks, Gary. So there's a lot of information directly on this this page here. So feel free to take a screenshot or a picture. But you'll obviously get the of what we send out to you as well. So I want to make sure that you saw our website is one of the key things. I'm going to stop my video here. It looks like I'm having a little internet issue. So I wanted to make sure that you can hear me. Our website is really the key resource. So to be able to search, use the website using the search function, using a keyword search on our website is really key to help you find anything. It's a massive resource with lots of different information that's available on all different areas of finding the information that you need about a job search or an internship search. We talked about Handshake already today. Finding jobs and internships, volunteer opportunities, student employment, all those things are available in Handshake, as well as those virtual career fairs that we talked about, those virtual information sessions, and other different activities that we've talked about today, all available in Handshake. Lots of research can be done on employers in Handshake as well. Even employers that are not connected to the University of Iowa can be researched in Handshake. They have information that's available in there. We were just talking about your major and deciding on a major. That's something that can be done through some of the assessments that we have available in our office. One of those is My Majors. U-Science is very popular. Focus 2 and Strengths are just some of the assessments that are available. And students can take those to help find out and identify what their individual strengths are, some of their interests, how they match up with certain careers and areas of interest. So very valuable to be able to connect with a career advisor to figure out which kind of an assessment might be good to be able to take. We talked about the mock interviews and big interview already. That's just a link to that information there. Parker Dewey is something that we have available in our office as well that gives students the opportunity to apply for micro internships. And these are paid experiences that last for a couple of weeks in general, gives them a specific experience that will help prepare them for an additional job search and give them some of that additional professional experience. We partner with many employers to be able to offer those opportunities through Parker Dewey, and that's available on our website as well. And then we have some resources for both international students and domestic students that are looking for jobs and internships globally. Currently, we have a system called Going Global. And then we'll be adding a system called InterStride in the near future. So it will allow students to be able to learn more about specific countries, the culture of those countries, the etiquette of a working environment in those countries. And it'll also help international students that are looking here in the United States to be able to identify companies and organizations that will sponsor them for OPT and CPT. So those kind of different resources that are available to students that are interested in a global experience. So these are some of the great resources that I would definitely recommend and have available to be able to refer your students to.
So, hey, this is Gary again. One of the things I want to just quickly mention is besides the Career Center, we have a great partnership with our academic advisors. And if students have questions about their majors, the academic advisors do a really great job of spelling out how to prepare for those things. Where we come into the picture is really, what can I do with my major, or where am I going with my major, is really where we kind of come into the picture. And hence, to our point about planning an internship, we think it's really, really important that students gain experiences outside a classroom. But we also know that internships take time. They take 10 plus hours per week over 8 to 10 weeks by definition to do, and many students put in much more time into their internships than that. But they also tell us one of the reasons they don't do them sometimes is just the lead time up to actually achieving one. We know that up to 6 months to securing one feels like a really long time, but at the same time, it is helpful for students to go through the process of figuring out really what they want out of an internship. And to that end, we actually have a couple of worksheets, one of which is highlighted at the bottom of the slide, to help them to think through really what they want out of an internship in terms of what they hope to get out of it, like leadership skills or a look at a field a little bit more closely to get a better sense of what they could be doing, those kinds of things. Many internships may or may not be paid. One of the things we offer, and it's a resource you'll see at the end of our presentation, is something called the Hawkeye grant, which is a stipend for doing internships in either government or nonprofit sectors, so to help some students who would otherwise not be able to do an internship because of cost. The other thing I do want to say is, for other reasons students may not do an internship are other life-related issues like housing, like food stability and things like that. We do have some resources, again, on the end slide, so it'll tell you and tell those students a little bit more about how we can support them in those ways as well. So we want to go on to the next slide and talk a little bit about, so internships are, if you want to think of them in a couple of ways, there's what I would call do-it-yourself internships and sort of pay-to-play internships. Most any internship a student does that doesn't require a placement agency is sort of a do-it-yourself, and that's where things like Handshake and our employers that come to campus come into play. That the students are researching these things, they're applying for them, and they're gaining them on their own. Now, for some students, they are already working in industries that they could see themselves having a future in as part-time jobs, perhaps. And we help them sometimes to help figure out how to convert those into an internship to get credit, whether it's academic or transcript notation on that type of internship, the one that they have kind of created with their current supervisor. We think that it's really a good idea to consider live internships when, in particular, trying to figure out what an industry looks like. We think they're really important to do live internships. Knowing that remote opportunities now exist in greater numbers than ever before, we also know that creates flexibility for students. We think that's important. Back to the do-it-yourself internships for one moment. I mentioned current work might qualify for an internship. And it's always a good idea to inquire at places that students would like to see themselves possibly working at someday. So even if a company doesn't post internships, it's still a good idea to reach out to employers and find out if they're possible. Handshake is actually a way that they can do that. And of course, visiting with the career advisors or with Al and his team are other ways to get contact information. The micro internships, we think it's a really important idea that students as early as rising sophomores, meaning right out of their freshman years, consider gaining internship experience. But it may be that they need to build skills first, and that's where micro internships really come into play. It's an opportunity to use a particular skill, do a project, get evaluated, and be paid to do that. We think that's a really important and for us, a relatively new prospect for our students. So the last type of internship I'd like to briefly talk about is actually what we call the pay-to-play or placement internships. These typically are agencies that work with students to help them find internships that meet their interests. And a couple of good examples of them are the Washington Center, which we've been a partner with for a lot of years, which has been great for some of our political science, our journalism, and law interested students. It's based in Washington, D.C. typically a student will go there either fall, spring, or into the summer and spend that semester in Washington. Another one that has been popular, although right now they're doing mostly remote internships, is IES, which are typically international internships. Our ISS office or our study abroad office helps a lot of students to combine the idea of study abroad with internship abroad. And I would think those are really good opportunities when it makes sense to the student based on their ability and whether they can gain scholarships, because there are scholarships for these things as well. So in seeking an internship, we do think that the best method to find an internship is all of the above. We think that meeting with friends of the family, great. Talking to your current employer, great. We think using Handshake, great. We think all combinations of those things are going to give the student the most opportunities. We do think that it's important to prepare. One of the reasons we're offering Intern Ready is because we know a lot of students, this is so new to them, that any advanced help they can get is great. I also like to point out that career advisors are around because one size doesn't always fit all, and we want to make sure that we're available to students who need a little more intensive help. So the other thing we'd like to point out is multiple internship applications are really important, particularly now. Last year, we saw a lot of students who were not able to complete internships because the company or organization they were going to do it with decided not to host those. But for those students who had multiple offers, they were able to latch onto an alternative and be okay. So we really think it's a good idea anytime, but particularly in the environment we're now in, it's a really good idea. So the last thing I'm not sure it's the last thing, but one of the last things I'd like to definitely talk about is reporting an internship. A lot of times students don't give themselves credit where credit is due. And that means that they can register their internship through Handshake and either get academic credit for having completed it or just a notation on their transcript that they've done that. Often students hear that they can do this, but they don't necessarily think about it soon enough to have it done in a time that allows the registrar's office to do the things they need to do to make sure that happens. So there are, every semester, there's a deadline for reporting, and they can always reach out to me or my colleagues, and we can always help them with that. So the one thing that I really want to take this moment to talk about is just succeeding in an internship, because what's the point of doing an internship if there's no future in it? So as we've already said, if it helps you to decide it's not for you, that's success. If it helps you to know this is the employer you would like to start your career with, that's great too. But while you're there, it's really important that the student looks at the opportunity and thinks about, do I fit in here? How do I fit in here? Seeks out mentorship, seeks out people who will take an interest in their professional development and put in the time to do the job well, so they really will be thought of as a potential candidate for a hire in the future. So we'd like to say that one of the things that we hear about University of Iowa students more than anything else is they're hardworking and their work ethic really stands out to a lot of employers. And we know they succeed in part because of that, but also because we coach them pretty hard on that. We think that you put in the time, it pays off. So Angie, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yep, thank you.
Take us home.
Okay, so just as some next steps as we wrap things up here and save a little bit of time for Q&A, is that some of the biggest things that you can do to for your student is just help them not be overwhelmed. Even in the best of the times, not in the middle of a pandemic, finding an internship or even finding a job, because much of this applies to finding a job, is overwhelming. It is not a one-step process. And so helping your student not be overwhelmed and encouraging them to break things into smaller chunks. And that's what Intern Ready is fantastic for, is helping them break the process down into smaller pieces, and really think about it in manageable pieces. Again, encouraging them to be part of Intern Ready. It's something that they can do at their own pace anywhere in the world. As Gary's mentioned and Al has mentioned, our advisors and our team is available during winter break and all year round. So even though courses may not be in session, well, technically they are, but we are here and available during winter break, spring break, summer break throughout the year. And really one of the next things also is building resilience. So we know that students might apply up to 10 internships before they find an internship, but it is well worth it. And just encouraging them to stay positive through this process. A lot of the employers also have had disruptions, might be working virtually, maybe having technology troubles. So it sometimes takes a little bit of follow-up and some patience. We've seen this many times before when the economy is a little bit bumpy. It just takes a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of I can't even speak, I'm sorry. Anyway, being adaptable. More Diet Coke is needed. So again, these are some of the top ways that you can help your student, and then obviously help them, encourage them to use the connections they have. They have so many more than they realize. As you take a look at these resources that are on the screen, if you have any additional questions, I would encourage you to go ahead and put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll answer those here in the next few minutes. But while you're doing that, on the screen are some additional resources. Many of these were mentioned throughout the presentation, and these are offices and resources across campus. These are our partners in supporting your students to help them be both the best student they can, the best Hawkeye they can, and also the best through their career development. So we work really closely with not only the Academic Advising Center, the Academic Support and Retention Office, so many others on campus. We work very closely with academic departments as well, the advisors and faculty in those departments. In addition to the career advising we've talked a lot about today, we're continually going into classes virtually and in person when that is appropriate to do programming. So your student may have heard from us in a class or through a program one way or another, even if they haven't seen us in an advising appointment. So these are some of our partners on campus that we want to make sure you're aware of as additional resources that might help your student. Again, if you have additional questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we will answer those live or in the chat. I know a few have come in, and thank you. We appreciate those questions. And then the other thing we want to make sure to mention is that we are on, not only do we have a pretty robust website that has a ton of resources. In fact, there is a parent tab on our website, but many of the resources we've talked about today are in the student tab. And I would encourage you to look through that as well, because you can really see what some of the things that we've been talking about today. We're also very active on social media. So if you are on social media too, I would encourage you to follow us on our channels. We are on Instagram, Twitter, we're on Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel as well. So if you have a platform of choice and you would like to follow us, we do put out information about our events and tips and resources and articles, videos, a lot of great content. And I know that I see parents follow us and like us and things like that pretty often, because I'll see them tag, or a family member will tag their student. And we appreciate that. There are many times that we will see a student come in after orientation in the fall as a first year student that they'll say, well, I'm here because my mom said I needed to come visit you. I don't really know the next steps, but here I am. And that's fantastic. We appreciate the referrals from you and your involvement in your student's career. It's very important for us. So you are welcome to follow us on as many social media channels as you want to, and we will provide content regularly. In fact, that's some of the things that Dana does on a regular basis, and we love doing that. So That's some of the ways that you can stay engaged with us throughout the year. We also get phone calls from parents, and those are welcome too. We are bound by different FERPA guidelines, so there's some things we can't talk about, but we can generally talk about resources and ways that you can help your child or your student anytime. So we encourage you to give us a call as well. And we have just a couple minutes left here, so if there are any questions, feel free to put them in or comments. We will be doing some follow-up for those of you that joined us today, and even those that couldn't. We'll be sending out, as Dana mentioned, and I think Al mentioned as well, we'll be sending out a PDF or a handout of all the slides. Hopefully the links will work in there. We'll make sure that the URLs are available too for you to check out some of these additional resources. And we will include just a brief survey so you can tell us, if you have any feedback from today's webinar, we would welcome that. Additionally, when you registered for the webinar, some of you indicated that you were interested in learning more on how to connect with Pomerantz Career Center from a recruitment standpoint. So we will follow up with those folks directly on that. As I mentioned earlier in the webinar, much of what we've talked about today has been focused on internships, but this pertains to so many more things than internships. This is very pertinent when a student goes to do a job. Like, well, I'm looking for a co-op, or I'm looking for a student teaching opportunity or things like that. These things pertain to them too. In some programs of study, when there's an experiential requirement or a hands-on or a field experience requirement, the department will actually do some matching for them, like in the College of Medicine and things like that. But in other programs, the student will go through a searching process. And either way, your student will want to be able to put that best foot forward with those really tailored documents, being able to interview and articulate their skills and abilities and those types of things. So again, feel free to take advantage of these resources over winter break and in the spring semester. I want to ask Dana, Gary, Al, any final comments before we wrap up here?
I do want to say there was one question in the chat box about shy students, and we get this a lot, especially, college is weird and hard to navigate. And then when you're thinking about your career and meeting other grown-ups and adults and things like that, it can be intimidating for any student. So we have an awesome staff. So whoever their advisor is that they connect with, just encourage them to be really upfront with that person and let them know their fears. And we have a really great staff that can guide them through that.
I would piggyback on that we've actually seen, this move to virtual benefit students that are more reserved or introverted. It is a little less intimidating to have a screen in front of you than to talk to someone face to face. So it's kind of a nice warm up. In fact, some of the virtual fairs that we've done have gone over very well. In fact, I think that when we are at a place where we can be back in person whenever that is, when we can safely hold our big fairs again, we will always, I think, be offering some level of virtual events and virtual fairs because they have been very popular, not only with students, but with employers too. And we hear like, oh, it's less intimidating than going into the main lounge of the IMU and seeing a bunch of employers at one place. So again, all it takes is that first step. So encourage your student to take that first step.
I would jump in and say too that if you didn't actually indicate that your company or organization is interested in recruiting and still would like to, please reach out to me directly and we'll make sure that your company or organization is recruiting at the University of Iowa, either for internships or full-time jobs. I'm happy to do that. You can either send that information directly to the Career Center at uiowa.edu email, and they'll forward it on to me or our staff in the employer team. But we'd love to connect with all the employers that you are a part of. So thank you. And thanks for being here today.
So there are some Q&A coming in. Question came in about a student looking for a specific internship job tied with their major or their career goals, because sometimes major and career goals are not the same, and suggestions on finding one within their home state if they're having trouble with that. I would encourage them to connect with a career advisor so we can talk more specifically about that. We've talked a lot about Handshake today, but there are other resources too. LinkedIn Jobs, Indeed. There are some industry specific job search websites and associations and things like that. So we can go into a more tailored advice there, because it is not a one size fits all for every student. And that's one of the things we try most to do, is meet students where they are. And when I say where they are, that means specific to their goals and what they've done developmentally. So, you know, and I think Gary might be also typing an answer there too. I can't see, but there's a lot of different resources. And Al has mentioned that we have thousands of employers that want to recruit University of Iowa students, but there's many more thousands that are connected with Handshake that a lot of times have their contact information available and can reach out to. A big percentage of jobs are never posted. And so sometimes it takes utilizing those connections and building a connection with an employer to find out about those unposted positions. And so we can work with students to really come up with that tailored approach.
I'd like to just throw in there real quickly that yes, if the student's having a hard time finding a internship in a home state or a rural area or wherever it happens to be, this is the beauty of the remote internship. It's really the thing that helps allow students gain experiences in areas that they have a hard time finding something nearby. So whether it's using Handshake or a website called internships.com, there's a lot of opportunities that can be researched that way.
We have some more questions coming in, which is fantastic, and we will answer those. I do want to, for those of you that have to run, because I know some of you might be joining us on lunch hours, I want to thank you officially for joining us and taking some time out of your day. We really appreciate the commitment that you're making and the interest in your students' career path. It's important to us, and it's always nice to speak with parents and have parents engage with us and have it be important to them too. So we will continue to answer these questions. But again, I just want to officially thank everyone for joining us, for those of you who need to sign off. So we have a question about an engineering student who wants to stay in school. And I'll just give a general answer. Gary is going to type a more specific answer, but for any student who's thinking about graduate school, we have some tools and ways for them to kind of do a little bit of assessment and evaluation or reflection on that and kind of look at the ROI of that. For some jobs, that master's degree is the degree that is needed to be able to do that job. So sometimes it takes kind of looking at it in reverse. What are we wanting to do, and then what's required? So we do have some degree or some career paths where it really is essential to have that master's degree to kind of be the working degree for that profession. And so that's something that we worked with the student on. Also kind of looking at budgeting and looking at financing that, and are there ways to do assistantships or GA opportunities to help finance that, or there's a lot of scholarship opportunities available too, especially for students who might be first generation and things like that. So we do have a lot of different resources. We even offer an academic course on Graduate Admission 101, I think it's called. So it helps you think through all of these things in a pretty detailed way.
Looks like that might be all the questions that have come in.
We are going to stop recording this session, and for those of you who need to go, you are welcome to sign off, and we will be wrapping up here quickly. I'm going to just wait for looks like we're typing in a few last specific question or answers to questions. So we will go ahead and wrap those up, and then we will wrap up as well. So thank you again for everyone who was able to join us. We very much appreciate that. And look for the follow-up email to come within the next 48 hours with the attachment or with the handout with the resources, and then also a quick little follow-up survey for us so that we can know how we did, and how we can improve in the future. So again, from the University of Iowa, we appreciate your involvement, and we wish you well and a fantastic start to 2021. Thank you.